Howdy y'all, Luke here with another Mammoth Sniper Challenge video. I just got back from ROing the 2024 Mammoth Sniper Challenge at Fort Eisenhower in Augusta, Georgia, and just wanted to go over some of the things that I saw as an RO that I think will better prepare me for future mammoths and hopefully help prepare y'all for future mammoths too. So first off, Mammoth this year, the weather was pretty rough. Friday, we got down, I believe, into the high 20s. And then Saturday, it rained. It rained in the morning. So as you woke up, got out of your tent, it was raining. And teams had to do just under 5 mile ruck in that rain, cold rain, quite miserable. And so one thing that kind of stood out to me there, because that really led to a lot of teams. Friday morning with 87 teams, and by the end there was only 57 remaining. So there was one match DQ, everybody else was drops on rucks, and that wet weather was just brutal on people. I saw people whose tents, sleeping bags, all sorts of stuff got wet, all their gear got wet, and it just kind of reminded me the importance of being prepared for any kind of condition. And so one thing I did in one of the first mammoths I ever shot is my teammate and I actually went out one day when it was pouring rain, and we did I think like a 1.5 mile ruck, but with all of our gear. I mean, rifles, tent, sleeping bag, everything kind of like as we would at the match. And we just kind of wanted to test it and see, like, you know, all right, we're putting sleeping bags in trash bags or dry bags or this, does it actually work? And so I think that's something that's worth doing, just so you kind of can pre-test that gear to see if it's going to survive in the kind of conditions you might encounter at a match like this. To continue that line of thought as far as gear goes and preparation, the other thing is to quadruple check your gear. So Mammoth is really rough on your gear. I mean, you're bouncing around for 25 plus miles with your rifle strapped to your back. Everything's getting jostled, banged up. A lot of the stages are pretty physical. This year, you had everything from crawling under barbed wire to jumping in the back of a deuce and a half. And that just really beats up on your gear. Unfortunately, there was a team this year that was disqualified on the last day, which really stinks, because their holster with their pistol inside of it came loose on a stage. I'm not sure the exact details, but what I imagine happened is that those screws backed out, caused them to lose control of their pistol, which resulted in a match DQ, which is, to me, kind of the worst thing that can happen at a match. And the other thing I saw was, at least coming through my stage, 2 different teams where they had bullets getting stuck in the lands of their rifle. Not sure exactly what the cause for that. My guess is that they were just loaded a little too long. And one of those teams, I guess, knew it was an issue. So they actually packed a cleaning rod with them and carried it around for the whole match, which is, of course, not ideal. The other team was not expecting it. So they had to basically skip that shooter on our stage. And then to try to get the projectile out, part of the deal at Mammoth is you can't receive help from other competitors, ROs, or staff or anything like that. It's kind of a you're on your own. So they managed to scavenge up like one of those galvanized steel sign frames, like that political signs go on, and basically took a cinder block, beat it to pieces, got a rod, and were able to shove that down their barrel and knock the projectile out. But I don't think anybody gets too excited about having to shove galvanized steel through a match rifle barrel. So obviously not an ideal situation. So gear, double check it, quadruple check it, and make sure it's ready. I noticed this last year when I shot, but even to more of an extent this year as an RO, but the importance of pistol shooting. Mammoth is a sniper challenge. You know, most of the focus is on long range shooting, but pistol shooting really plays a big role in this match. So my stage had up to 20 available pistol points, and that accounted for 25% of the total points on my stage that I ran. So on my stage, you could rack up 25% of your total points just by shooting a pistol really well. As far as my stage went, our top score was 45 and our lowest score was 1. So there was quite the gamut there, but our average points, I went and tallied up everybody who shot our stage, our average points was 14 points. So if you look at that average of 14 points, and see that you have 20 available pistol points, it really reinforces the importance of being able to shoot a pistol. Chris and the crew at Mammoth definitely like to put some really difficult pistol shots in there. So my stage, we had 2 targets. They were like full-size IPSCs. One was at roughly 50 yards and one at roughly 100 yards. So, getting all 20 points there, I don't think is too realistic, even if you're a really good pistol shooter. I mean, shooting 9mm at 100 yards, especially when it gets windy, is just difficult. But a 50-yard full-size IPSC, there's really no excuse to not be hitting that. So when I shot Mammoth last year, I just shot my Glock 19 with an RMR. But one thing that I will certainly do when I go back to Mammoth, which will hopefully be January of 25, is I'm going to bring a very accurate pistol that is basically an advantage for taking those kind of shots. So I shoot a ton of USPSA. I do that with a Glock. That's hit factor scoring. It's a combination of time and points. You're never shooting 50 or 100 yards. But at a match like this, it all comes down to accuracy. The only thing that counts is you finish the rucks and your points. So it's really important to make those pistol shots. So coming back next year, I think I'll most likely shoot something like a 2011. I've shot a lot of CZ Shadow 2s in the past. They're just so heavy that the idea of rucking with that just kind of makes me sick. But pistol shooting is really important. Get out there, practice it. Make sure your pistol runs too. The amount of pistol malfunctions I saw was crazy. And the even crazier thing is it wasn't the 2011s and the race guns. The malfunctions were either military issued SIG P320s, because we had a lot of military guys at this match. One guy actually had to remove the whole slide from the frame of his SIG to clear that malfunction. And then the Glocks, that I call them Gucci Glocks, which is where you go buy like a slide from here, a frame from here, you put this crazy like trigger in it, and then they just never work. If you're gonna shoot a Glock, I think your best bet's just to keep it stock. But if you can get your hands on something like a 2011 or a Shadow 2, a gun with a really good trigger, and a red dot. I think that I've shot a lot of red dots over the years now. At first, I wasn't quite a believer in them. Now I'm 100% sold, especially on those long shots where you're shooting, 50 and 100-yard pistol targets. I think a red dot's a must. So pistol shooting, focus on it. Another kind of big change this year was the amount of weapon-mounted laser rangefinders. So in years past, you would always see some of these, and 90% of them that you saw out there were military guys that, they had access to the kind of equipment that's crazy expensive, hard for us to get. You'd see stuff like the L3 Storms, which aren't even available to civilians. Even if they were, I'm sure they're upwards of $10,000. You'd see the occasional civilian running something like a Wilcox Raptor, which those worked well, but they are like $6,000-$7,000, which I think for just your general civilian shooter is a whole lot of money to justify for something that you're probably not going to use super often. So kind of the big thing this year was Vortex. They recently released their Impact 4000. Been on the market for quite some time. And I saw a ton of these. Probably, I bet I saw 40 or 50 of these Vortexes out here at the match. And the vast majority of people I spoke to had a great experience with them. There was only one guy I ran into who was having some issues with his. But it was foggy. I mean, there was definitely a lot of struggle with laser rangefinders in general, but those Vortexes seem to really perform, and the ability to range that quickly and have that mounted on your gun, I think, is a huge advantage at an unknown distant match like Mammoth. Now, if that's kind of out of the realm of the possibility, I would say the next thing that would be really good to have would be some of the laser rangefinder binoculars that have the integrated applied ballistics or Vortex's program. And Vortex makes those, SIG makes some, and I think those are really great to have. And last place would be just kind of a general rangefinder, because it's so much lower. With a general rangefinder, I laze it, I get 800 yards, and then I'm having to, look at a paper dope sheet or look at my Kestrel, say 800, all right, here's my dope. And let's say, when you're shooting 1,000, your dope's going to be significantly different from 1,000 yards to 1,050 yards. So when you use that traditional rangefinder and you laze it at, let's say, 1,025, you're right in the middle. You're looking at it. Which one do I pick? So the laser rangefinders with integrated ballistic solvers, I think, are a must-have at Mammoth. And if you can snag a weapons-mounted LRF, then that's definitely worth doing. The last thing I'm going to touch on is bipod options. So my stage was it was a long-distance stage. So secondary shot roughly 800 yards, primary shot roughly 1,100 yards. And the vast majority of competitors shot from prone. There was a couple that did not, and part of that was due to bipods, and they did not have much success doing that. But the way our stage was set up is that you were kind of shooting on a slope where, imagine your head's here and your legs and butt are back there behind you, slightly elevated. And so if you had a real short bipod, like think a Harris, some of the Atlases, the Magpul bipods, you couldn't get enough elevation to get your gun on target. So then you had to throw your pack up there, put your bipod on your pack. Now you're almost too high, and that just really hurt your stability. That's where the guys that had the SkyPods from MDT definitely made good use of them. I've been wanting to buy one of those SkyPods for quite a while, but they're like $600 to $900 depending on which one you get. And I keep looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is way too much money to spend on a bipod. But I can tell you that if going back to Mammoth, I'll have a SkyPod with me. Those were a few things I noticed as an RO at the 2024 Mammoth Sniper Challenge, and just wanted to share with you kind of those tips in hopes that whether you're competing in Arkansas in a couple months or whether I'm going to see you at Mammoth in 2025, I hope that they can help you and help you succeed. And as usual, if you have any questions, comments, stuff like that, you can comment here on YouTube or feel free to look me up on social media. I'm pretty easy to find and always happy to help.